Welcome to La Taverna Friuli Wines, the definitive podcast on wines from Friuli, Venezia Giulia. I'm your host, Wayne Young. Welcome everybody to La Taverna Friuli Wines. Hope you all are having a great day. Hanging out here with my friends, Natalie Ben Lolo here in the studio. How you doing, Nat?
I'm fine. How's everybody? How are you?
I'm doing just great. A little warm today, isn't it?
Extremely warm today.
Yeah, but you look well. You don't look warm.
The sun helps. The sun's shining down.
Well, we need sun to kill the coronavirus.
We need sun to kill the coronavirus and to grow the wine.
Exactly. And also our very special guest in the studio tonight in La Taverna is Michele Ciani from Aquila del Torre. Michele, come stai? How are you doing?
Good. Thank you for inviting me.
That's a pleasure to have you here.
Good. And La Taverna really looks fine. Looks very, very nice.
You're
wine talk.
Friulian, so how is it? Does it look like a real taverna?
Yeah, it looks like.
All right.
It is. It's not just looks. It is.
And it's going to get even better. So
yeah.
Thank you all for coming. I got Alexander and Ghislaine up on stage tonight. I see Heather and Keith in the audience. Guys, come up whenever you're ready to answer a question or ask a question, excuse me. But I want to jump right into it here because we have a lot to talk about. Biodynamic is something that I certainly don't know a lot about. Nat, do you know much about biodynamic winemaking?
I don't, but I have been, as I've been learning more about wine production, I've learned something about how, and also living here, and a lot of the local people and farmers grow their own wine, and they're very much into planting with the moon. I know it has something to do with nature, and as I said before, maybe it's a sort of slightly hippie way of growing wine.
There you go. Well, that's why we have Michele here tonight, because he's going to sort of set us straight on what's going on. So, by all means, Michele, why don't you give us sort of a brief overview? When did the winery start? The name of the winery is Aquila del Torre.
Okay.
And it's because you're in Savorgnano del Torre.
Okay. Torre is not a tower, but it's the name of the river. River of Savorgnano del Torre.
See that? I did not know that.
Yeah. And Aquila is eagle.
Of course.
Yeah. And we are up on the hillside. Up on the hillside. All the vineyards, the cellar is looking south, facing down, facing the river. And we look from there about 300 meters above the sea level. We look at all the plain of Friuli, and now that in this season you can see very, very far away, you can appreciate the water of the lagoon.
You can see the lagoon.
Yeah, and the name of Aquila, so the eagle it sounds like we are up on the hillside, facing all this panorama view. And Savorgnano del Torre is a special place because it's in the north side of the appellation Friuli Colli Orientali.
Just a second, Michele. Hang on just a second. Can Alexander Ghislaine, can you hear us? My guy is telling me here that we might have a problem with volume. Alexander, is everything good as far as audio is concerned? Yeah, but I can't hear you guys. That's kind of the problem. Okay, hang on just a second. Io non sento, no. Alexander, can you give me one more? Martine, can you say hi again?
I can hear you, Wayne.
Okay, now I can hear you perfectly. Okay, good. Okay, we'll edit that out. Yeah, that's fine. We can do that, right? It's modern times. This is
easy.
Oh, hi. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you perfectly now, Mart. Thank you very much.
Hi.
Okay. Sorry, Michele. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
You point at the headphones, everybody starts to panic. So, but everything's good. Okay.
See, the biodynamics is with us. It's magic a little
magic.
bit. Yeah, it works.
Okay.
Now, we are in Savorgnano del Torre.
Savorgnano del Torre.
Savorgnano del Torre
300 meters above sea level.
Yeah.
Facing south.
Facing south. All the vineyards are facing south, southeast, southwest. And Savorgnano del Torre belongs to this north side of Friuli, Collier, and Italia appellation. It's one of the most fresh and areas in the appellation, and we get the wide temperature range between night and day before the harvest period, and that's why we have some certain grape varieties cultivated. But at the same time, it's a very nice place with all the woods surrounding the vineyards, and that's the key to understand why we started to go with organic farming and biodynamics.
Oh, so you started with organic and then moved to biodynamic.
Yes.
Okay.
So my family started in late 90s this project for the wine growing and wine production. And since 2005, that was my first harvest. The approach was very sustainability focused.
Okay.
And from 2010, we started to get this certification as organic farming. Since 2013, we got the organic certification following the European regulation. Then we belong to this very wide group of about 1,500 wine growers in Italy that are called FIVI, Federazione Italiana Vignaioli Indipendenti.
Okay.
And inside this group, I started to talk with them and visiting their vineyards. People that started few years back biodynamics and watch the difference and appreciate what I could do in my vineyards as they did previously. So I already had some ideas, but that was not really real for me. You have to change your eyes a little bit or train your eyes to see what a vineyard cultivated as biodynamic farming expresses the balance of the plants coming from the balance of the soil. And that was very motivating for me. And I started to do it in our vineyards.
When did you start biodynamic?
So, first of all, your soil and vineyards, they have to be ready to get this impulse. That's not very scientific way to it's not really agronomically
correct
known, but impulse is something that comes from your part. So it's your intention, okay, but also the impulse of what the cosmos can give to us. We are influenced by the moon. We are influenced from other planets, and so there are certain period of the year that you prefer to do some farming, some activities, some others. For example, we bottle the wine following the moon, but it's not just that.
And that's something that like Nat was saying. We've been hearing that all the time. It's like you never. I don't know, what is it? You don't bottle during a new moon or something like that because all of the sediment gets churned up by the tides. I mean, it's the same type
tides,
of gravitational influence.
The moon influences and attracts the fluids, water, but also the life that's in the wine. Yeah. So the wine is something that lives in the casks,
exactly,
in the cellar, and then lives in the bottle. So it's evolving, something that it doesn't stop. So that's a different point of view, a different approach.
Can I ask you something, Michele? So it's like trusting more in the human element, not just the scientific element and being a wine grower, but also trusting in the relationship between nature and when you talk about the impulse, it's sort of, you said it's not very scientific, but it's like a feeling. So you're trusting in the natural rhythms yourself as well as a wine grower then.
Yeah, you have to make a lot of observations more. It's more fatigue work because you have to be there. You have to observe how the plants react to your farming, and you have to open up the ground and see what's under the grass, how the roots develop, not just the vines roots, but all the herbs, the spontaneous herbs around, and it's a different approach. It's a different point of view. It's not technical. It's technical plus your eyes has to be more with a different perception. You know.
So you're saying that there's a lot of sort of there's a lot of in sort of observation when you're talking about. So there, basically, biodynamics trains you to observe certain elements, and this way you better understand what's going on in your vineyard. So we were talking a little bit about this before we started. So, like, you know, it seems really interesting, but you know, one of the problems is that we always sort of are kind of doubtful about that. We're kind of, you know, there's this whole big thing about whether or not biodynamics is just sort of, you know, sorcery, or if it's actually has some science behind it. Is there any sort of scientific studies that proves the effect of biodynamic winemaking on the vines?
Yeah, my idea behind is like we need as biodynamic wine growers to have an active perception. You're not passive; you are more active. Your eyes, they train to look at certain things that before you were not used to look at. If you start to approach the biodynamic farming with a scientific way, you lose something. So in the biodynamics, you don't talk about limits, numbers, and so on. You much more look at how it's the balance, how it develops with the seasons. So Rudolf Steiner, who started 100 years ago to talk about this, starting from the philosophy, some growers asked him, we have some problems, we have to solve these problems. Our soil is no more fertile,
yeah.
as before, so we have to do something. So that was a real need. And he answered philosophically, okay, but he gave them a way to observe different things. Now we talk about biodynamic wine, but there is no recipe to make a biodynamic wine. It's the result of the biodynamic farming. So in the cellar, you have to make less as possible. So less impact, less inputs in the cellar as possible to express what is your work outside the observation, okay? But then how to get the balance in the plant, starting from the roots where they dig down and they live underground, starting from the soil that has to be preserved for the fertility of the soil, for the growing of the vines now, but for the future generations.
Okay.
So it's a different, I said, approach, but it's a different, I can say, lifestyle, okay?
Yeah.
Because you start from different questions.
Do you think we could use the word intuition? Is there?
Yeah,
it's like developing your. I mean, without being too, but somehow learning to trust your intuition because you're using your eyes, you're trusting in nature, and so somehow you learn that way. Intuition is the word I want.
Is that intuition? I guess intuition is sort of like an automatic response to an observation. So without even knowing what you're looking at, you sort of understand what you're seeing.
You feel it. Somehow
Feel
you
it.
learn to feel it by observing it. You then learn to feel it. Like you're talking about the moon. And
Yeah, I can tell you this story. I started as all young biodynamic wine growers to watch at somebody else vineyards, and I had this perception of how the ground reacted while I was walking inside. So that was really impressed me. You also see the color of the leaves. Sometimes you look at some vineyards, but I can see also my neighborhoods close to our vineyards. The color is not as vital green as our vineyards. And these colors, I didn't have this perception before. Now I have it. Then something else that biodynamic wine growers or farmers follow is a calendar. It's called Maria Thun calendar. And each day has a different feature. There are leaf days, there are flower days, there are fruit days and root days.
Right.
So each day is different because there is an influence from the universe, okay? Not just by the moon, but you have certain activities to do on the leaves in some sort of days.
Okay.
So on the flowers or the fruit, on the roots, because in that period you can have a better response of the plants.
the word harmony
So-
comes to mind.
Yeah, harmony. Okay, harmony.
Yeah, I know a
and
lot of-
harmony and balance together. Yeah.
I know a lot of people, like sommeliers, will talk about like, oh, you should never taste wine on like a root day.
Yeah,
Because root days, like your wines always taste really
Rooty.
not well, like herbaceous or whatever. So
Herbaceous.
you should taste your wines on like fruit days or whatever. Michele, before we go on, I want to give somebody on stage a chance to sort of ask a question. We have Alexander, Ghislaine, Martine, Gina, Keith, all on stage here. If one of you guys want to ask a question before we move on, please jump in. Go right ahead. Ghislaine, did you have a question?
Have this calendar of Maria Thun on my phone, and it's really amazing. Sometimes you taste a wine, you think it's not nice, and then I open another bottle, it's not nice. Third wine, not nice, and then I look at the calendar and I see, oh, it's a root day. So this sometimes really works. This Maria Thun calendar for tasting wines. But my question to your experts, Michele,
Yes.
is, for example, if you also have to pick the grapes at a certain day, when it's perfect to pick the grapes, but to harvest the grapes. But if on that day before, for example, a heavy storm is, it's not the right day, but a heavy storm is coming, and you might lose a lot of a lot of grapes because of storm or thunder or hail or something.
Yeah.
What will you do? Will you pick it on a on a root day, for example, or will you?
That's a really good question.
Well, for example, the harvest is the really tricky part of making wine. You have to make a decision, and a week before and after can really make a big change to the result. I can say that if you feel it's a good day for harvesting that grape, and it's in yourself sort of way, considering the weather conditions or other weather conditions and climate, and then you feel it, that's a right day, and then you look afterwards to the calendar and it's a fruity day. That's the way you are in the mood of biodynamics. I have to be concerned about the weather for the harvest, for sure. Even when we bottle the wine, we have to very concerned about the air pressure. If you have a bad weather condition with low pressure, it's hard to preserve what you put inside. You need to have a very good weather day and high pressure to get the best result for bottling.
This I didn't know.
Yeah,
so
it's
you
not
have
just
to pick
the
on
moon.
a high pressure day.
Yeah, it's better. And it's similar to the wine tasting. Usually, okay, there is a calendar with the routes and days and so on. But if you taste the wine with low pressure, with a rainy day, it tastes differently than in a high pressure
day.
Going back to your question, I have to consider the weather. Okay, I can consider more and more effective what is the result of picking that grape in the fruity day. Okay, following the Mariatun calendar. But to the other side, if I'm a small wine producer with like just in the backyard with some grapes to harvest is something. Okay, but it's very different when you have a large extension of vineyards. So for us, it's important to also consider the surface. So about 18 hectares planted on the hillside, on terracing. It's hard to farm, but it's also hard to harvest. So at a certain point, you have to make a choice. And even if I don't really strictly follow the calendar, but at the same time I respected everything backward, for me it's enough.
Okay.
I cannot be strictly following the rules.
Okay,
I have to.
It's more important to have the right day to pick the grapes.
Yeah, if they are mature, I cannot wait too much because to look for a fruity day, because at a certain point the alcohol could be too much for me.
Okay.
So I have a week before the fruity day, but now it's the right time because I tasted the grapes and I made some considerations, some decision. I have to now harvest the grapes. I have to consider everything I did before, not just that day. Will be much better to follow that, but it's not strictly that.
Okay. Ghislaine, did that?
Thank you.
Okay, that
Yeah,
answered
thank
your
you.
question? Fantastic.
Yes, thank you.
So we try to follow as much as possible. And for example, one of the biodynamic farming activities we do is spray on the ground this preparation called horn manure.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about that for sure.
Also called the 500. And usually the 500 preparation is spread in the fields, on the vineyards, on the ground, usually in springtime and during the fall time. And we follow the calendar, okay? That's a root day, okay? But if it's a root day with very high temperature, very dry, and the weather conditions are too dry, I don't spray that, even if it's a root day.
Okay.
I would much prefer to spray that living preparation I prepared with the water, with the styrene dinamizzatore in Italian,
Right.
and so on, to spray on the ground that's much more responsive and much more can absorb this impulse of the 500, and much better if it's rainy afterwards. So the ground really reacts to my impulse of horn manure.
Can I admit something? Can I admit my ignorance? When we started talking about biodynamic wines years ago, and somebody described this thing to me of like filling a horn with manure and then burying it, I thought that was when it ended. Like I thought that was the whole process. I was like, that's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. You bury this horn full of manure, and like in the plants on 500 meters away from that are supposed to feel this thing, but no. Then I found out that what you do is you bury this thing and then you dig it up.
Yeah.
And then you mix it with water.
Yes.
So you're basically cultivating living organisms. And then you're mixing, and you can't mix it with really cold water. You can't mix it with boiling water. It has to be the right temperature.
Yeah.
And then, what you're doing is you're sort of making a cultivation of these natural organisms that live inside the ground that have sort of grown inside of this horn. And then you take that preparation and you spray it everywhere, and it's kind of like inoculating with indigenous yeast. It's almost like when you start a fermentation with yeast, you're like starting this, microbiological fauna by creating sort of a madre and then spreading it throughout your land. Is that kind of the concept?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Yes, it
It
is.
sounds like every week I'm learning something. It reminds me of something that we were talking about last week, where you take your what do we call the mother yeast in Italian? Lievito madre.
Lievito madre,
And they
exactly.
mix it. We were speaking last week about how you add this fermented already, and you keep adding it to the next one, a drop into the next one, and mixing it in. It's something similar.
Yeah. Well, that was when the Pied de Couve
That's
we were talking
right,
about with
Pied de Couve.
Moreno last week. Yeah, when he was saying he does like a Pied de Couve, and then he just takes that and then he just moves it from tank to tank. Do you do that? Do you do like a
Yeah,
Pied de
we do the
Couve?
same with the Pied de Couve of
Yeah.
indigenous yeasts.
So yeah,
So
only indigenous yeast, obviously.
the horn manure is manure that's transformed to something else. The materia, the
Material,
the
yeah.
material, it transforms. It gets a different smell, a different feeling, consistency. Yeah, and you, especially on the focusing on this horn manure, the horn with the manure is put underground during spring and summer time, so the horn manure gets all the impulses of the light and warmth. Then it's something very concentrate, okay, and it in itself it retains all these forces or whatever, very very concentration. Then you dig it out, okay, end of the season of the summer, and then you can preserve it in copper contents. Okay,
has to be copper.
Yeah, copper or glass. Okay, and then there are certain period of the years when you take it off. We use, for example, rainwater. We warm up the water 35, 37 degrees. That's the living temperature for a microorganism, and just few grams per hectoliter.
Wow.
Okay. And then we start doing this stirring around.
Yeah,
there is a vortex.
Oh yeah, you have to make like a
Yes, there is a vortex when
a whirlpool.
yeah, like a whirlpool, like a jacuzzi, a jacuzzi, biodynamic jacuzzi, and so the water doing this vortex reactivate the horn manure, not just because there is the water that's important for living, but because there is the oxygen and the air going inside, okay, inside the vortex, and then after the vortex gets stuck in sort of way, so it's as similar as before, it doesn't evolve. At that point, with this stirring machine, you start to do the vortex to the other side, to the other direction.
Oh, so
you turn
spin the
to
other way.
You
Yeah.
spin the other way. Okay, so the air and the oxygen goes inside, and the living inside the horn manure restarts again inside the
Okay.
water. So the water brings this impulse. So the horn manure is a biodynamic preparation for spraying, and in certain days I prefer before the rain or when you have worked the soil, so the
soil
horn manure
open, yeah.
is open to be
Absorbed. Okay.
Yeah. So at that point is the best to give this impulse. So it's microorganism you spray around that start to live in the soil. So you give more life, more vitality to your soil, and year after year, working with other farming like cover crops, like other farming strategies, okay, together with in synergy with the whole manure, you get the best result. And then in few years, especially in our vineyards, the oldest ones, you really feel walking inside the vineyards that the ground reacts under your feet.
Yeah, you said it feels more spongy.
Yeah, spongy
under your feet.
Yes.
That's really cool.
That's something that the roots feel.
Okay.
And the plants react differently with the vegetation and with development with the leaves and so on. So the grapes at the end are the result of a environment that's different, that's in balance, I can say, much more than before. So about the fermentations, the grapes are completely different for starting the fermentations. So that's why we work with indigenous yeasts, because the grapes are much more fermentable. And the pied de cuve, it's a different strategy to go with spontaneous fermentations, because you give a direction to your mass of must to be fermented, and you sort of select your indigenous yeast that are more active, going with the alcoholic fermentation we want as wine growers. So you select your pied de cuve of that year, that will be the lievito madre, or the starter of that year, that gives a feature of fermentation for the fermentation of all the wines of that year.
So the type of indigenous yeast that you grow that year is sort of specific to that year.
Yeah, and it's not one specific yeast, but it's a community of yeasts.
Okay.
So traditionally, following the enologists or the conventional way of making wine, you add selected yeast, and you add one selected yeast usually, and it's one single expression. In this way, going with indigenous yeasts and using the pied de cuve, you have a community of different yeasts. The first ones will look more for, they like more the sugar in the must. Then there is another one going in synergy with the previous one, and so on. And at the end, the yeasts that are fermenting are completely different from the beginning, because the last yeast working are the one they like more the alcohol and less the sugar.
Okay.
But it's a harmony of expression of a community of yeasts.
Of different yeasts.
And the wines taste, at the end, the wines taste different.
That was exactly what I was about to ask you. This organic development, if you like, with what you're doing, it affects the taste of the wines.
Yes, they affect the taste. In Aquila del Torre, we make we press the whole bunch, and after that the must is fermented with indigenous yeast. And our idea behind is to get this deepness of taste. And after the fermentation, we go for about 12 to 14 months on the lees. So for us, it's important to get this deepness, to get these intense flavors coming from the yeasts. We start from with the fermentation. And for us, it's the best way to preserve and express all the work we did previously in the vineyards. Yeah. So it's not just artisanal way of making wine. It's just starting from a different starting. We start from grapes that are much more fermentable, because they are the expression of a balance of the plant. So in the cellar, as less as possible, less inputs as possible, And that's why we introduced some egg-shaped concrete eggs, casks, especially for our Friulano. That's a local native grape variety in Friuli. We ferment inside these concrete eggs, and we keep the wine on the lees, and the fine lees, they move by themselves inside these egg-shaped casks.
Yeah, because of the natural convection, right?
Yes, convention inside. So
warmer on the top, cooler on the bottom, and then denser on the
Can
warmer.
I ask a question?
Yeah.
Before you ask that question, Natalie, I want to ask everybody who's listening if they have a question, because we have Alexander and Gina and Martine and Keith all up on stage, and they may have a question that they want to ask, and we've been going on. So Gina, did you want to ask a question?
Ciao tutti. Yes, thank you
Ciao,
very much.
Gina. Thanks for listening. Come on, let's hear your question.
Thank you for having this room. It's very interesting.
Thank you.
Alessandro, I'm enjoying, as a biologist, I am enjoying your explanation about the process. And I realize you need a lot of time. So, was there a moment, you're working according to a philosophy that takes time to make a good product, but you're also an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Was there a moment when those two clashed enormously? How does the two of them go together?
It's a very good
Great
question.
question.
Wow,
Very
okay.
good question.
Yeah.
Thank you, Gina. That's an
Thank
awesome
you.
question.
Yeah. So as I mentioned before, it's not just a backyard with some grapes growing, but it's a business. So inside the FIVI group, Federazione Italiana Vignaioli Indipendenti in Italy, I got in touch with some vintners who belong to this association called Agricoltura Vivente. Agricoltura Vivente is an Italian association that follows Alex Podolinsky way of making biodynamics. Alex Podolinsky now is no more with us, but he was really a leader of how we can go practical with biodynamics. In Australia, they spray for hundreds of hectares the biodynamic preparations. So biodynamics is not just the backyard or few small surfaces. It has to be considered as a way of doing farming with a large extension. That's why I prefer to have this approach, because at the end is business. I like to do my work. I like to do wine, but to the other side, you have to be very practical. And Alex really taught us about how to be practical. And if you see a change after few years, okay, you can follow biodynamics. But if you really don't feel it, or you don't really see the change, do something else. My idea was to at least 4 or 5 years of doing and be very active and spray these preparations on the ground, for example. And I really felt there was a change. And I had to convince first my family, but then it's a team. So I had to share this experience with the people they drive on the tractor first. Then people, they work in the cellar with me. And so it was part of sharing this experience with the old team.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so sometimes you can sort of think, well, are you spending more money on chemicals, treatments, all of these types of things, or are you actually saving some money by doing these sort of natural processes? Now, obviously there's different equipment involved and things like that. But, like Gina was saying, is the return on this method of growing grapes, is it worth the effort? I mean, does it pay back in terms of, sales, quality, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah. It's not a wine that can be for a niche. First of all, we make wine to be to enjoy, to be for the pleasure of having wine, and at the same time, I have to express the land, the origin, where it comes from, and the variety. Then can be some part of me, the style, okay. But first of all, wine is a joy of life. So first of all is that. Then if you find out that there is biodynamic farming behind organic farming or eco-sustainable farming, that's something more. But from my point of view, I have to consider that my sons, they will make wine from the vineyards now I grow, I prune, I harvest from, or will be over in few years. So you have to focus on long-term wine farming, wine growing. So you have to change your approach, much more involving your team of work. There is something not. You have to break some rules that you were used to follow, and at the end, in the beginning is hard because you are out of your comfort zone,
Okay.
and you put your team out of your comfort zone. But then after I say few years, I can say it was worth. The wines changed. The wines are more. They have a more human touch.
Okay.
You can feel the difference just watching the people they taste and their eyes. There is something else, and that's what was motivating me
So that
in the
was
beginning,
your
because
big motivation.
Yeah, because I really felt the wines produced with organic and biodynamic farming were different. They were not perfect, but they were more living. They were more in my frequency. Okay.
That's important. I mean, you have to feel it.
Yes.
You know, the wines have to be.
Yeah, it's hard to propose and sell wines that you don't like.
Keith, did you have a question? I see Keith has unmuted his mic. Keith, hit me up with a question.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so very much for allowing me to ask this question. Actually,
Thank you for being patient, Keith.
No problem at all. It wasn't like being at the DMV or anything like that. So I have three very quick questions. Number one, is this certified or practicing? And if certified, by whom? Number two, you went from organic to biodynamic, and in organic, you're focusing on soil fertility, building.
Keith, we lost you. Hey, Keith, your audio went out. Hello. Keith. Keith.
Same kind of focus.
There, you're back. Now you're back.
I was not okay.
Yeah, I can hear you now. Sorry, Keith.
Yeah, no problem. So I was asking about the amount of time. You spend a lot of time on composts and lunar cycles. Is that the same amount of time that is being spent, in the vineyard? And finally, are there any wineries, any vineyard types that are not suitable for biodynamic? Thank you very much.
That's interesting. Okay.
So first of all, in Italy, we have just one private certification, that's Demeter Italia, that can certificate the biodynamic products. They certificate wine, they certificate fruits, jams, they certificate cosmetics, they do transversally all of biodynamic products. But the approach is similar to the European regulation. there are some rules. There is a tutor from Demeter. They come to visit your vineyards, your soil, and they can give you some methods to follow. I prefer to share my experience with somebody else, much more than being followed by certification body. Okay, and sharing was much more interesting and motivating. So in Europe, you have many biodynamic wine growers. They follow much more being part of an association of biodynamic farmers. For example, there is one in France that now is developing in Italy. It's called Biodynamic. Okay, Biodynamic is an association that talks about wine and not generally biodynamic products.
Okay, sold only wine.
Yes.
Okay.
And I visited some of the chateau or domain in France. They belong to Biodynamic, and they have a very, I think, practical approach that I prefer. So this year we started the application to be part of this group. That's much more interesting, going out of the Italian borders, okay? And I could appreciate how this biodynamic approach or wine approach is completely different out of Italy. And it's much more, the people are much more used to it, and you don't really have to explain every day or every time you taste our wines what is biodynamics. And the approach of the customers, the wine consumers, are much more friendly to biodynamics. The second question was about
organic
from organic to biodynamic. It's something that Demeter or Biodynamic asks to start with biodynamics. But the background is that if you don't have respect of your soil and plants before approaching biodynamics, it's a waste to start biodynamic. So at least doing few years of organic farming helps to get a soil that's much more reactive and a plant that's much more in balance. So they can much more get the impulse of the biodynamic preparations.
Okay.
And biodynamic preparations are few of them. The main two are horn manure,
Yeah, exactly.
500, the horn silex, 501, that you
What's
spray
that one?
on the leaves.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
And how do you make that one?
Every time you take this quartz powder
Okay.
that was aged, buried underground in the horns. Okay. During the autumn and winter time, when you have I'm sorry, it was just I missed out. To 501 is the light and warmth, so it's an impulse of light and warmth inside the horn silex, and the horn manure was during the winter and fall time, so the ground forces. So 501 is sprayed after stirring with the water, is sprayed on the leaves and gets it gives to the leaves and the flowers too an impulse of light and vitality to the part of the plant that reacts as photosynthesis to the light. So that's the other main spray preparation of biodynamics. Then if you are very motivated doing the compost with the biodynamic preparation for compost, you have first to consider where the manure comes from. Sometimes, or some farmers, they have their own manure. Okay, that's the best. We don't do that, but we purchase a good manure that can be fermentable. Okay.
What kind of animal?
Usually it's cow.
Cow. Okay.
Cow manure.
Not horse.
They have a different fermentation,
Okay.
and the cow has more two stomachs, and the way of the digestion of the cow works differently than horses or goats and so on.
Okay.
So you have to consider the cow as a reactor of how the matter
nuclear
changes.
reactor.
My
Yes.
goodness. Wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's pretty funky.
So that's much more interesting to work and make a compost with the cow manure, and you add biodynamic preparations to enhance the fermentation. So it's something similar to what you consider during the harvest time in the cellar. During the winter time, we purchase this we purchase this manure, cow manure, and we make some cumuli,
Some piles.
okay, and we preserve them with some grass, dry grass on it. It has to be preserved or covered, but to the other side it has to breathe. So the microorganism, bacteria especially, they start doing this process of fermentation, and then during the springtime you open up, you put some air inside, so you mixed it and reproduce these lines of manure, okay? And during the springtime and summertime, they evolve and they get mature. So they are ready for the autumn.
And we took a walk yesterday and we saw the cumuli, these piles of manure. And you were saying you also have to mix in like ortica and chamomile and
Nettle.
nettle.
they are-
Nettle. Thank you. Stinging nettles. Thank you.
Stinging nettles. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay.
Chamomile.
So you have to mix those in. Are there like certain I
Yeah,
don't
the
know, some
preparations-
elements in those plants?
The biodynamic preparations you add to the compost are coming from chamomile, ortica.
Nettles.
They are from corteccia di quercia, oak,
Oak bark.
okay,
Wow.
valeriana, and
Lamb's lettuce.
equiseto. And
What's
so on.
that?
So
Translating for the English people, lamb's lettuce valeriana. It's called lamb's lettuce in English.
Really? Mm-hmm. Only in England.
Probably. Probably only in North London, but they...
It could be. No, lamb's lettuce?
Valeriana, quel insalata, it's lamb's lettuce.
Guys have weird names for so many
What do you
things.
call it in America?
I don't
You don't
know.
even know.
It's not lamb's lettuce. That's all I know. Sorry, before we go on, Keith, what was your third question? Because I think we missed your
we
third
missed it.
question.
Yeah.
Keith, can you come back and repeat your third question for us?
Yeah, I was wondering, he's using biodynamics. Are there any wineries that are definitely, off the chart for biodynamics? Is it something that can be employed by every winemaker? And if not, who are the ones that shouldn't be pursuing it?
Oh, okay.
Okay,
Wine, I think you also mentioned types of wines that shouldn't be made with biodynamic, right, Keith? Or is it just winemakers?
Winemakers.
Winemakers. Okay.
Yeah, so production areas, basically.
Okay. Yeah. Is there some place in Friuli maybe that you would not recommend being biodynamic?
In Aquila del Torre, all the vineyards are surrounded by the woods, and there is a contest where you get a good start to make biodynamic because the environment helps you. So it's a vocated land to make it. I also visited other vineyards in Alsace, for example. They are just close to the town with the electricity lines up or close to the traffic, and still they work biodynamic. Yeah, there are some limitations, but still, if you are motivated, you can do that. I would not expect people doing biodynamics just in front of the autoroute. Okay, because the environment really maybe
is a bit
don't
polluted.
help. Yeah, don't helps you, but more is protected. More, you have to consider your. We consider our wine estate as a living organism together. So I have to consider the vineyards, but I have to consider the woods surrounding. I have to consider I have some bees house close to the vineyards. I have to consider the herbs living inside the vineyards, and so on. So it's an holistic approach.
Very global kind of view.
Yes,
of
you have
everything.
to, a global kind of view, and some places maybe don't really have that, and they are not vocated from the beginning. So why you have to insist
Okay,
to
yeah.
do that? So
Gotcha.
if you are motivated and you don't have the environmental features to do that, but you want because yourself and you want to give your intention to do that, and you do it, why not? But it will be harder. Okay. And maybe you lose motivation with the years. Yeah.
Cool. Very cool. So, we're almost at an hour, and we've talked a lot about the farm, and we talked a lot about biodynamics, but we haven't talked about your wines. Can we talk a little bit about the wines that you make and what wines you make at Aquila del Torre? And also talk about, because I mean we have people from different countries listening. So obviously, let's talk about the wines, and then maybe we can talk at the end about like where you can find them. So I know what I do want to say right now is that we're drinking your Riesling, which is not a typical grape from Friuli, but it's a historical grape from Friuli. There's a connection here.
Yes.
So tell us a little about the Riesling, and then tell us about the wines that you make as well.
Yes. Okay, we talked about Friulano. That's Tokai Friulano. If people know about the history about the Tokai Friulano, so it's the main local grape variety as white grapes. Then in Savorgnano del Torre we have Picolit. That's very special grape variety to make a sweet wine usually, and it's really the Friulian touch on the white wines. It's very rare, and Savorgnano del Torre is one of the houses in Friuli of this variety, Picolit. We also grow in our vineyards because of the weather conditions and the fresh, cool climate and the wide temperature range. We grow Riesling that comes from this Austro-Hungaric influence, I could say. Friuli is a crossing region where we got some influences from east, from Slovenia, from north, from East Austria, and the sea, the other cultures, they came from all over. We are a region that's not defined with a specific culture. We have a language that's called Friulano, but we are a mix. We are a mix of different cultures coming from north, east, and Latin origin. So Riesling comes from this influence from north, from the Austro-Hungaric Empire. So then we have Sauvignon Blanc. French people came to Friuli too, so they took Merlot, for example, or Cabernet Franc, Cabernet Sauvignon, and Sauvignon too. And so in Aquila del Torre, we also grow Sauvignon Blanc because of the weather conditions. So we mainly focus on white wines. Then Friuli has some red varieties. I already mentioned Merlot, and that's important for us in Aquila del Torre. But more important for us is a local grape variety called Refosco dal Peduncolo Rosso. That's a long name.
Yes, but we love Refosco.
Refosco dal Peduncolo Rosso. They say it's an old relative of Syrah. Yeah, and
is that true?
Yeah, it is.
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
I knew that it was a parent grape of a lot of other grapes in Italy.
Yeah,
like Corvina and things like that. I knew
Corvina.
that it was, But I didn't know it was connected
Yeah,
to
there
Syrah.
there is a connection. Some
Very interesting.
parents from Syrah. So a few hectares are planted for red grapes. Let's focus on Riesling. Why
Yeah.
we make Riesling?
But also, is it because it's a cooler area?
Yeah,
where
it's a
you are?
cooler area of the appellation.
Okay. So you're sort of like in this little corner up in the hills. It's sort of northeast of Udine.
Northeast of Udine.
Okay.
That's
and,
correct.
And you're at 300 meters, so about 1,000 feet above sea level.
About 1,000 feet.
That's pretty high.
Yeah, consider that the vineyards that are more high in the appellation, they get 400 almost meters above the sea level. In our area, but 300 is quite a bit, and we are about let's say in miles, about 30 miles to the sea,
Okay.
and about 40 miles to the Alps. So one side we face south to the lagoon of Grado and Marano, the north of the Adriatic Sea, and to the other side, opposite, looking to Austrian border, we have the Alps. So it's just in the middle. That's something similar. Maybe some of the people are listening now. It's very similar to the area of Pyrenees in France.
Ah, okay.
Yes, there is sometimes there are some flavors I can recognize in the whites coming from that area. Pyrenees,
yeah.
Pyrenees, yeah.
Nat, have you ever been to the Pyrenees?
No, but Manu Chao comes from the Pyrenees.
Oh.
Music, good
Really?
music, culture. Yeah, good.
Okay.
Interesting place. I would like to go.
Okay.
Okay.
You being so well traveled, because I've never been.
No, neither have I.
Okay.
But anyway, different varieties in Pyrenees. Here we get this special site that's very unique. So the altitude and the climate and this middle position between the sea and the mountain is very, very special. Yeah. So Riesling is one of the unusual. 100% Riesling is kind of unusual in our region.
I mean, some people do make it, but usually it's kind of like blended in as a secret ingredient.
Yeah.
But you do it 100%.
Yeah, I do 100%. I broke the rules in a certain way.
Good.
Because my father planted the Riesling in 1999, and he got this idea of making a blend with Sauvignon Blanc, Tokai Friulano, and Riesling.
Okay.
Riesling usually is the secret of the cellar to get the aromacy and the acidity.
Okay.
So sometimes to help wines that are less expressive for aromacy and acidity, you put some Riesling. For us, was a chance to say, well, in Friuli we can make good white wines, but can they age long as to be appreciated, evolved in the bottle? Well, Riesling is a good chance to make a white wine that can develop and can be very interesting more and more after years aged in a bottle.
Yeah, Riesling is one of those white wines that is known for aging for a long time. I personally have a very particular relationship with Riesling, and I said this yesterday when we were doing the tasting, and actually we're sort of tasting some of the wines that we opened yesterday, and I said that Riesling stimulates my monkey brain. If there's something about Riesling that like goes past my rational thought process and goes right into like this kind of primordial like pleasure centers in my brain, I freaking love Riesling.
Could I?
Yeah.
Could I use the word, being post-COVID, so my olfaction is not fully where it was before, but could I use the word aromatic?
Of course you
is
should.
the word that comes to mind,
It
because
is
I can smell it.
Absolutely an aromatic.
It's
grape.
I can really sense that. Really, I can really smell that and taste it.
Michele, when we talk about aromatic grapes, we talk about Sauvignon, we talk about Gewürztraminer,
Yes.
we talk about Riesling.
Riesling,
no?
for sure.
What
Yes.
else would be considered an aromatic grape variety?
Let's see.
Friulano? No.
No, it's not really aromatic.
Malvasia? No.
No.
Chardonnay? Obviously not.
Not.
Doesn't smell like anything.
Yeah, the full idea of aromatic could be Gewürztraminer. Gewürztraminer is,
yeah.
I think, the most
perfumed.
yeah, the most representative of aromatic grapes.
I love that.
But the style behind this Riesling is we go very dry, vertical. Riesling is a good reader of what's underneath. The soil where we have the vines is marine origin. It's called flysch. That's the technical term to define the locally called ponca.
What origin did you say, Michele? What origin?
The origin of the soil, right?
This soil comes from 50, 60 million years ago when we had the sea pushing down the sediments. So it's a sedimentary marine origin soil.
Okay,
marine.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. 50,
So-
60 million years ago, that's like when you graduated high school. That.
No comment.
So the Riesling is a good reader of this minerality that comes from this marine origin. And I feel the aromacy, okay, but tasting this wine, you feel on the lips kind of saltiness. That's not just salt, it's a marine saltiness.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I totally agree
Wonderful.
with that. But that's one of the things that kind of connects a lot of Friulian wines, that they have this saltiness to them. You know, even when you go to other, as long as you're in Collio or Colli Orientali and you're on that Marna Calcarea, that Ponca, you get that kind of saltiness, whether it's right on the lips like this Riesling, or you get it more in the
Delicious.
back of the palate or on the aftertaste. Yeah, it's a wonderful wine.
Delicious.
Absolutely wonderful wine. So, Friulano, Riesling, Sauvignon,
Piccolit
Piccolit,
for
right?
the whites.
Exactly. Reds are Merlot
And Refosco del Peduncolo Rosso.
And that's it.
Yes.
Keep it simple.
Very simple. Usually,
Well, here in
Friuli,
Friuli,
you
everybody
can-
makes 45 wines.
no, we focus on 6 varieties on
great.
18 hectares. And going back to the biodynamics, we work the soil and we enhance the roots to go and dig down to the layers that are more down under the soil to extract what was under the sea. That's why the wines are salty. They are they have this flavor. They have this deepness. They have this taste of what is underneath. So from Friulano, Sauvignon and Riesling, we go the same kind of vinification, indigenous yeast on the lees for 12, 14 months, and then bottle. And then it's the bottle aging that gives you the development of these wines. And Riesling express much more this feature with the time.
Nat, you look confused.
The lees.
The lees.
Lees, dead
Lees.
yeast.
Talk to me. What's the lees?
Dead yeast cells. Explain lees to Natalie, please. This is a whole. We could talk about 4 hours about this, but just
The lees.
quick idea of what lees are. Help out Natalie, who doesn't know.
The fermentation goes through all the sugar. So the yeasts, they ferment the alcohol to they ferment the sugar to alcohol. Mm-hmm. When there is no more sugar to develop in alcohol, the cells of the yeast, they break, and those are the lees. And inside these yeast cells, yeast wall cells, there are some antioxidants can preserve the wine longer in the cask if you keep the wine on the lees. So you don't add preservatives, but you you have this chance to work with lees that can be a very good preservative.
Also for
aging the wine in the cellar.
It's basically the sludgy junk on the bottom of the tank, Nat. That's what it is.
when you use the word antioxidant, being a woman, I think, so this wine will keep me younger. So this
It's more for the
this-
wine than for you, but yeah.
okay, but then I'm connecting it. I'm
It's true.
understanding.
It's absolutely true.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
You can make a mask with Elise if you want to next harvest.
All right, guys.
You can come
We're
and
going to start selling
The junk on the bottom, you make a face mask,
Exactly.
a body mask.
a
Absolutely.
body mask with Elise.
This is a new
Please.
this is a new a business opportunity for us, Michele. We're going to do biodynamic face packs
With Lee's.
with Lee's.
Fantastic.
Anyway.
Sorry,
I-
guys.
Yes.
I'm leaving.
Ciao.
This
Gina.
was very interesting. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Gina. I hope we answered your question. I hope you enjoyed. Please come back.
We did.
Yes,
you did.
Fantastic. So I hope to see
Grazie mille,
you.
Michele. È
Ciao.
stato molto interessante e spero di visitarti presto.
Grazie.
Gina, facciamo anche delle puntate in italiano. Allora seguici, in questo modo ci vediamo quando facciamo anche delle cose in italiano.
Sarà interessante, molto
Super.
interessante. Grazie a
Grazie,
tutti.
Gina.
Ciao,
Thank you very
everybody.
much.
Bye bye.
Grazie.
Thank you. Ciao.
Michele, I think maybe we can wrap up. I mean, where are your wines available? Are you available in the States, obviously?
Yes, in the States, especially
Stateswide, or do you have some specific markets where you can find your wines?
especially we are imported by Vintage 59. They resell our wines in the Boston area,
Okay.
Washington D.C., and Texas, and California.
Wow. Okay. So
Those are our main customer
Okay.
for US, and maybe I will go in October.
Okay.
In US and make some wine tastings.
Well, I think the most important thing is we get whoever is listening here to come here
Or you
and
can
visit
come
us
here.
and
yes.
visit you up in Savorgnano del Torre, because it is really absolutely beautiful place. So I highly recommend.
I will come. I will come there,
Martine,
Wayne.
I will personally bring you up there.
All right, sounds
Yeah.
good.
Cool.
Come and visit us. We have also some prosciutto.
I
San
might come and
Daniele.
visit
You
my
have some.
sister.
We
Yeah,
have
but
some Montasio.
Yeah,
Frico.
Martine's.
We have everything.
Martine's
for you.
vegetarian, isn't she?
Yes.
Vegetarian.
All right. No prosciutto for you,
No prosciutto,
Martine.
but yeah, there is also some
We'll give you
vegetarian
some. We'll
restaurants.
give you some
too.
cheese, and you can go out and munch on the nettles.
But I
Sounds
think
good.
she likes wine. She likes wine, and she's interested in the land. So, you know.
We know.
Sounds, yeah. Yep, you're right, sis.
Okay, Martine. Yeah, come and see us. I will definitely take you up there.
Love to you guys. Thank
Cool.
you. It was really interesting.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Ciao, thank you.
I want to thank everybody. Ghislaine, Keith, Alexander was here. He's gone, unfortunately. But Heather and Christine, Christopher and June, they're all out in the thing. Luca and Cole, you guys are listening, but you didn't come up on stage. Now is your last chance. If you got something that you want to say, by all means, jump up on stage now. Raise your hand. Otherwise, we're going to wrap it up here. It's an hour and 15 minutes. We've been going with Michele. Thank you, Michele. You are fantastic. Thank you very much, Natalie, for being here. Your input is always very, very appreciated.
Thank you. And thank you, Michele, because it feels like we could have easily done 2 hours without even blinking.
Yeah.
Without even blinking.
So that means, Michele, you're just going to have to come back.
I had
We'll have to
come
do
back
another
with a red
one.
wine next
Red
time.
wines, exactly. Absolutely.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Roberto. We're gonna go out. So yeah, thanks everybody. Thank you very much for coming in. We're recording, so you're gonna be on the podcast. The podcasts are gonna be published sometime soon. I'm gonna be getting that together, and then they'll be available on various places. But I'm trying to get a few episodes in the can, as they say, before we go. So thank you everybody for coming. Have a wonderful evening. Have a wonderful day, and we will see you next week. I have a really interesting guest next week, a guy named Paul Balke, and he's going to come and he's going to be talking about his book called Wines of the Northern Adriatic. So we will see you next week. Thanks, guys. Hey, I want to thank everybody this evening for coming. Thank you for listening. I appreciate Natalie Benlolo, our co-host, Rob Milani, our sound guy. Follow me on La Taverna Friuli on Facebook. I'm also on Instagram at Wayne Grape. And you can find this awesome music on YouTube at Beat Ambassador. Finishes with an A.